My brother put child abuse photos on my computer and called CPS. My parents believed him and kicked me out with my kids. If you're just tuning in, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. And please show us some love with a like. And comment below to let us know where you're tuning in from. The sound of sirens pierced through the quiet suburban morning like a knife through silk. Coffee mugs rattled on kitchen counters as neighbors pressed their faces against windows, watching the chaos unfold at the Henderson family home. 3 police cars and a white CPS van had descended upon the modest 2-story house, their flashing lights painting the manicured lawn in alternating shades of red and blue. Inside, 28-year-old Alice Henderson clutched her 4-year-old daughter Lily closer to her chest while her 7-year-old son Isaac peeked out from behind her legs. The living room that had been filled with Saturday morning cartoons and the smell of pancakes just minutes before now buzzed with the harsh voices of uniformed officers and the crackling of police radios. "Ma'am, we need you to step away from the children," said Detective Williams, a stern-faced woman with graying temples. Her voice carried the weight of someone who had seen too much in her 20 years on the force. Alice's heart hammered against her ribs as she tried to process what was happening. "I don't understand. What's this about? What are you looking for?" Her mother, Patricia Henderson, stood frozen by the kitchen island, her usually perfect composure cracked like broken glass. Her father, Robert, paced near the window, his jaw clenched so tight the muscles in his neck bulged. The family patriarch who had always been her protector now looked at her with something she had never seen before in his eyes: doubt. "Someone reported disturbing material on your computer, ma'am," Detective Williams continued, her tone clinical. "Material involving the exploitation of minors." The words hit Alice like a physical blow. The room spun as she struggled to breathe, her children's confused faces blurring through tears she didn't remember shedding. "That's impossible," Alice whispered, her voice barely audible above the chaos. "There's nothing like that on my computer. I would never." "We have a warrant to search the premises," Detective Williams interrupted, producing a folded document from her jacket. "Specifically your laptop and any electronic devices." Alice watched in horror as officers moved through her childhood home like a swarm of locusts, turning over cushions and rifling through drawers. This was the same living room where she'd played board games with her family, where she'd opened Christmas presents, where she'd told her parents she was pregnant with Isaac 7 years ago. "Mama, I'm scared," Lily whimpered, burying her face deeper into Alice's shoulder. Patricia finally found her voice, though it trembled. "Alice, baby, tell them this is all a mistake. Tell them you don't know anything about this." "I don't know anything about this." Alice's voice cracked with desperation. "Mom, you know me. You raised me. I would never hurt a child, especially not my own children." That's when her brother Damon appeared in the doorway, his usually confident swagger replaced by what looked like genuine concern. At 31, Damon had always been the golden child, the successful real estate agent with the expensive car and designer clothes. But something in his expression made Alice's blood run cold. "I'm sorry, Alice," he said quietly, avoiding her eyes. "I had to make the call. I saw things on your computer yesterday when I borrowed it to print some documents. I couldn't just ignore it." The betrayal hit harder than any physical blow could have. Her own brother, the person who had taught her to ride a bike, who had walked her to school when she was afraid of bullies, who had been her protector, had just destroyed her entire world with a single phone call. "You're lying," Alice breathed, staring at Damon in disbelief. "You're actually lying right now." Officer Gilbert emerged from the home office, holding Alice's silver laptop like it was contaminated evidence. "We found several images in the downloads folder," he announced grimly. "Preliminary examination shows they match the description in the anonymous tip." Alice felt her knees buckle. Anonymous tip? She caught herself on the arm of the sofa, her mind racing. Yesterday afternoon, Damon had indeed borrowed her laptop to print some contracts for a client. She'd been in the kitchen making lunch while he worked in the office. He'd been alone with her computer for almost an hour. "This is impossible," she repeated, but the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. "I've never downloaded anything like that. I don't even know how to." "Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent," Detective Williams began, pulling out handcuffs. "Wait." Robert Henderson's booming voice filled the room. The 60-year-old construction foreman had built his reputation on reading people, on knowing when something didn't add up. You said there was an anonymous tip? Detective Williams nodded. Called in this morning around 7 a.m. Male voice, claimed to be a concerned family member who discovered inappropriate material on the suspect's computer. Alice's eyes darted to Damon, who had gone noticeably pale. 7 a.m. She had been in the shower, getting ready for their planned family breakfast. Damon had arrived early, claiming he wanted to spend time with his niece and nephew before his open house later that day. Damon, she whispered, the pieces clicking into place like a horrifying puzzle. What did you do? But her brother was already backing toward the door, his hands shaking as he fumbled for his car keys. I'm sorry, Alice. I'm so sorry. The sound of Damon's BMW peeling out of the driveway cut through the morning air like a confession. Detective Williams immediately radioed for a unit to intercept him, but Alice barely heard the static-filled voices. Her entire world had collapsed in the span of 20 minutes. Get those children out of here, the social worker said, her voice gentle but firm. Janet Morrison had been with CPS for 15 years, and she'd learned to compartmentalize the heartbreak that came with removing children from their homes. We need to process the scene. No, please, Alice begged, reaching for Isaac and Lily. They're my babies. I would never hurt them. Please don't take them away from me. Patricia stepped forward, her maternal instincts overriding her shock. Can't the children stay with us? Robert and I are their grandparents. We've been caring for them whenever Alice worked late shifts at the hospital. Alice worked as a pediatric nurse at the local children's hospital, a fact that made the accusations even more devastating. How could someone who dedicated her life to healing children be accused of such heinous crimes? I'm afraid not, Janet replied softly. Given that the alleged perpetrator was living in this household, we need to place the children in neutral foster care while we investigate. But Mama did nothing wrong. Isaac suddenly spoke up, his 7-year-old voice filled with fierce loyalty. She reads us bedtime stories and makes us eat our vegetables and helps me with homework every night. She's the best mama in the whole world. The innocence in his voice shattered what remained of Alice's composure. She collapsed onto the sofa, sobbing uncontrollably as reality crashed over her. Her children were being taken away. Her family's trust was shattered. Her career was likely over. And somewhere out there, Damon was running from the truth of what he'd done. 3 hours later, Alice sat in an interrogation room that smelled of industrial disinfectant and broken dreams. Her hands were cuffed to a metal table and her lawyer, a overworked public defender named Sarah Jenkins, shuffled through papers with the exhaustion of someone who'd seen too many cases like this. They found 12 images, Sarah said quietly, all downloaded yesterday between 2:15 and 2:47 p.m. That time frame is going to be crucial to your defense. That's when Damon was using my computer, Alice said for the 100th time. I was in the kitchen making sandwiches for the kids. They can check the browser history, can't they? Can't they see I wasn't even logged in? Sarah nodded, making notes. We'll request a full forensic analysis. But Alice, I need you to understand something. Your brother has disappeared. He's not answering his phone and his apartment appears to be empty. That's going to look very suspicious to a jury. Because he's guilty. Alice slammed her cuffed hands on the table. He planted those files and then called it in to make himself look like a concerned citizen. But why? Why would he do this to me? The question hung in the air like smoke from an extinguished candle. Why indeed? Damon had always been competitive, but this went beyond sibling rivalry. This was deliberate, calculated destruction. Detective Williams entered the room, carrying a manila folder thick with evidence. Miss Henderson, we've been looking into your brother's background. Did you know he's been under investigation by his real estate company for embezzlement? Alice's blood ran cold. What? Apparently, he's been skimming money from client deposits for the past 8 months. We estimate he's stolen close to $200,000. His boss was planning to press charges next week. The pieces began forming a horrifying picture. Damon hadn't just destroyed her life out of spite. He'd used her as a diversion, a scandal so shocking it would overshadow his financial crimes. You think he planned this as a distraction? Sarah asked, her pen poised over her legal pad. Detective Williams nodded grimly. A child exploitation case generates massive media attention. It's front-page news, primetime coverage. Meanwhile, a white-collar embezzlement case gets buried on page 6. If your brother needed time to flee the country with stolen money, framing his sister for the worst possible crime would buy him that time. Alice felt physically sick. The magnitude of Damon's betrayal was beyond anything she could have imagined. But the images, where would he even get something like that? That's what we're investigating now, Detective Williams replied. We found traces of an encrypted messaging app on your computer that was installed and deleted within that same time frame yesterday. Someone used your laptop to access illegal content on the dark web. Sarah leaned forward. Can you trace who accessed those sites? We're working with Federal Cybercrimes Unit now. The FBI has taken over the digital forensics. Detective Williams paused, studying Alice's face. Miss Henderson, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've learned to read people. And everything about this case screams setup. Hope flickered in Alice's chest for the first time since the nightmare began. Does that mean you believe me? It means we're going to follow the evidence wherever it leads. But I need you to think carefully. Did your brother have any reason to access your computer before yesterday? Any reason to know your passwords or login information? Alice's mind raced back through recent months. He helped me set up my online banking 3 weeks ago. I was having trouble with the password requirements, so he created new passwords for several accounts. And last month, when my computer was running slowly, he said he'd clean up my hard drive. The room fell silent except for the humming of fluorescent lights. Each revelation painted a clearer picture of premeditation, of a brother who had been planning this betrayal for weeks, maybe months. We need to find him, Detective Williams said finally, before he disappears completely. While Alice remained in custody, law enforcement agencies across 3 states mobilized to locate Damon Henderson. His real estate license had been suspended, his bank accounts frozen, and a BOLO alert issued for his vehicle. But Damon had vanished like smoke in the wind. Patricia and Robert Henderson sat in their daughter's hospital break room, where Alice's supervisor, Dr. Angela Evans, had just delivered more devastating news. The hospital board has no choice, Dr. Evans explained gently. Until these charges are resolved, Alice is suspended without pay. I'm sorry, Patricia. I've worked with your daughter for 5 years. She's one of our most dedicated nurses, especially with pediatric trauma cases. This accusation goes against everything I know about her character. Patricia wiped tears from her eyes. Do you think people will believe she's innocent? The media is already running with the story, Dr. Evans admitted. Local news picked it up this morning. Pediatric nurse accused of child exploitation. The headlines are brutal. Meanwhile, 300 miles away in Atlanta, Damon Henderson sat in a hotel room under a false name, watching the news coverage on his laptop. His hands shook as he saw Alice's photos splashed across the screen, her professional headshot from the hospital directory now associated with the worst possible crimes. He'd never intended for it to go this far. The plan had been simple: create enough scandal to distract from his embezzlement while he liquidated his remaining assets and fled to a non-extradition country. But seeing his sister's face on television, knowing that Isaac and Lily were probably crying themselves to sleep in foster care, made bile rise in his throat. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Payment confirmed. Departure arranged for tomorrow night. Destroy this phone. Damon stared at the message, his finger hovering over the delete button. In 18 hours, he would be on a cargo ship bound for Southeast Asia, with enough stolen money to start over completely. All he had to do was let his sister take the fall for his crimes. Back home, an unexpected alliance was forming in the Henderson family's darkest hour. Idris Thompson, Alice's ex-husband and father of their children, had driven through the night from Chicago when he heard the news. Despite their divorce 2 years earlier, he knew Alice better than anyone, and he knew she was incapable of the crimes she'd been accused of. "I want custody of my children," Idris announced as he sat across from Patricia and Robert in their living room. The tension between them had always been thick. They'd never approved of their daughter marrying so young, but crisis had a way of creating strange bedfellows. "They need family right now," Patricia said quietly. "Not strangers in foster care." Idris nodded. "Alice called me from jail. He told me about Damon, about the embezzlement. We need to prove he set her up." Robert looked up from his coffee, his weathered hands gripping the mug like an anchor. "How do we prove something like that? The boys disappeared and the evidence is on her computer." We hire a private investigator, Idris replied. Someone who specializes in digital forensics. If Damon planted those files, there has to be a trail. That afternoon, they met with Vinny Rodriguez, a former FBI cybercrime specialist who now ran his own digital investigation firm. Vinny's office was a cluttered maze of computer equipment and technical manuals, but his reputation for uncovering digital evidence was legendary. I've seen cases like this before, Vinny said after reviewing the preliminary police reports. Framing someone for digital crimes is easier than most people think, but it always leaves traces. The question is whether law enforcement knows how to look for them. He pulled up a complex diagram on his computer screen. Every file has metadata, creation dates, modification history, IP addresses. If your brother planted those images, I can prove it. But I need access to the original hard drive. Idris leaned forward. How do we get that? Vinny smiled grimly. We pray that Alice's public defender is smarter than she looks. Sarah Jenkins had been a public defender for 8 years, and she'd learned that the most important battles were often fought in evidence labs rather than courtrooms. Armed with Vinny Rodriguez's analysis, she filed motion after motion demanding comprehensive digital forensics of Alice's computer. Your Honor, she argued before Judge Patricia Vance, the preliminary examination by local law enforcement was incomplete. We're requesting a full forensic analysis by an independent expert to examine file metadata, browser history, and system logs. Prosecutor James Mitchell objected vigorously. Your Honor, the defendant is clearly attempting to delay proceedings while she concocts a defense. The evidence is clear. Illegal images were found on her computer. But Judge Vance, a former prosecutor herself, understood the gravity of child exploitation charges. Given the severity of these accusations and their potential impact on the defendant's career and family, I'm granting the motion for independent digital forensics. Mr. Rodriguez, you have 48 hours to examine the evidence. Vinny worked around the clock, his fingers flying across keyboards as he dissected every byte of data on Alice's laptop. What he found was a digital smoking gun that would change everything. Look at this, he told Sarah excitedly, pointing to lines of code on his monitor. The illegal images weren't just downloaded to the computer. They were uploaded from an external device first, then downloaded to create the appearance of internet acquisition. Sarah studied the technical data, trying to understand its implications. What does that mean exactly? It means someone physically connected a USB drive or external storage device to this computer and transferred the files manually. Then they used a proxy server to access illegal websites and re-download the same images, creating false browser history and download records. The sophistication of the setup was staggering. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. It was a carefully orchestrated frame job that had taken weeks to plan and execute. Can you prove who did it? Vinny grinned. Better than that. I can prove exactly when they did it, what device they used, and here's the kicker. The original files still contain metadata from the source device. The metadata told a story that would have made crime novelists jealous. The original files had been created on a device registered to d.henderson.realestate@companyemail.com, Damon's work laptop. The timestamps showed they had been transferred to Alice's computer during the exact window when Damon claimed to be printing innocent real estate documents. But Vinny's investigation revealed something even more disturbing. The illegal images weren't random downloads from the dark web. They were sophisticated digital compositions, created by combining legitimate stock photos with exploitative content using advanced image manipulation software. He didn't just frame her, Vinny explained to the assembled team in Sarah's cramped office. He manufactured the evidence from scratch. This level of digital manipulation requires serious technical skills and expensive software. Idris looked confused, but Damon barely knows how to use email. He's always asking Alice to help him with computer stuff. That's what I thought too, Patricia added. He can barely figure out social media. Vinny pulled up another screen showing browser history from Damon's work computer. 3 months ago, someone using his laptop started researching digital forensics, image manipulation software, and methods for planting evidence on computers. They also accessed tutorials for creating fake metadata and covering digital tracks. The picture that emerged was of a man who had spent months learning advanced computer skills for the sole purpose of destroying his sister's life. The The level of premeditation was staggering. "There's more," Vinny continued. "I traced the proxy servers used to create the false download history. They're connected to a service that caters specifically to criminals trying to frame others for digital crimes. This is a professional operation." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. Professional how? Someone paid money for this service. Big money. We're talking about a criminal enterprise that specializes in creating fake digital evidence for hire. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Damon hadn't acted alone. He'd hired professional criminals to help him frame his own sister. The FBI's involvement transformed the case from a local family tragedy into an international criminal investigation. Agent Rebecca Torres, a specialist in cybercrimes and human trafficking, took over the case when Vinny's evidence revealed connections to an overseas criminal network. "The service your brother used operates out of Eastern Europe," Agent Torres explained to the Henderson family during a briefing at the FBI field office. "They call themselves Digital Solutions, and they specialize in creating fake evidence for clients willing to pay premium prices." Robert Henderson looked physically ill. How much did he pay to destroy his own sister? "Based on the sophistication of the setup and the custom-created evidence, we estimate between $50,000 and $75,000, Agent Torres replied. Money that likely came from his embezzlement scheme. Patricia gasped. He stole money from his clients to pay criminals to frame Alice? It appears so. But here's the good news. This criminal network has been under international investigation for 2 years. Your brother's case gives us the evidence we need to shut them down permanently. Meanwhile, Damon was discovering that criminal enterprises don't offer customer service or refunds. The cargo ship that was supposed to transport him to Southeast Asia had been delayed indefinitely due to port complications. His contacts had stopped responding to messages, and he was running out of money in his Atlanta hotel room. The fake passport he'd paid for was poorly made, and he'd quickly realized that international travel with forged documents was far more difficult than movies made it appear. Airport security systems were too sophisticated, and his anxiety made him look exactly like someone trying to flee the country illegally. As news reports about the case intensified, Damon found himself trapped in a nightmare of his own making. His sister's face was on every news channel, his niece and nephew were traumatized in foster care, and his parents were devastated by his betrayal. For the first time since this began, the weight of what he'd done started crushing his conscience. Alice sat in her jail cell, reading a letter from Idris that had arrived that morning. He wrote about visiting their children in foster care, about Lily asking when mommy was coming home, about Isaac refusing to eat because he was worried about her. The lawyer says we're getting close to proving your innocence, Idris had written. Vinny found evidence that will clear you completely. Just hold on a little longer. But holding on was becoming increasingly difficult. Other inmates whispered about her case, guards looked at her with disgust, and she'd already received 3 death threats from strangers who'd seen the news coverage. The presumption of innocence was a legal concept that had no bearing on public opinion. That evening, her phone privileges allowed her one call. Instead of calling her lawyer or family, she dialed a number she knew by heart, Damon's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail as it had for the past week. Damon, she said into the phone, her voice breaking. I know you're listening to these messages. I know you can hear me. Your niece and nephew ask about you every day. They don't understand why Uncle Damon isn't coming to see them anymore. They don't understand why mommy is gone and why strangers are taking care of them now. She paused, wiping tears from her cheeks. Whatever you did, whatever money you took, we could have figured it out together. We're family. We were supposed to protect each other. But what you've done to my babies, Damon, please just tell the truth. Don't let my children grow up thinking their mother is a monster. 300 miles away, Damon listened to the voicemail for the 5th time, his hands shaking as he held the phone. His hotel room was littered with empty whiskey bottles and unpaid bills. The money was almost gone, his escape plan had crumbled, and the guilt was eating him alive. He thought about Isaac and Lily, about bedtime stories and birthday parties, about the way they used to run to him yelling, Uncle Damon, whenever he visited. He thought about his parents who had raised him to be better than this. At 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, Damon Henderson walked into the FBI field office in Atlanta and surrendered himself to Agent Torres. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks. hollow-eyed, unshaven, and broken by the weight of his crimes. "I want to confess," he said quietly. "I want to tell you everything." His confession lasted 6 hours and detailed every aspect of the conspiracy, from the initial embezzlement to hiring the criminal network, from planting evidence on Alice's computer to making the anonymous tip to CPS. He provided bank records, communication logs with the criminal network, and detailed timelines that corroborated every piece of evidence Vinny Rodriguez had uncovered. "Why?" Agent Torres asked finally. "Why destroy your sister's life instead of just fleeing with the money?" Damon was quiet for a long moment. "I thought if there was a bigger scandal, nobody would pay attention to missing client funds. I thought I could buy time to get away clean." He looked up with tears in his eyes. "I never thought about what it would do to Isaac and Lily. I never thought about how it would destroy our family. I was scared and desperate, and I made the worst possible choice." Within hours, charges against Alice were formally dropped. She was released from custody and reunited with her children in a tearful scene that made headlines across the country. The story that had painted her as a monster now cast her as a victim of unprecedented family betrayal. Damon pleaded guilty to embezzlement, filing false police reports, evidence tampering, and conspiracy charges. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution to his victims, including substantial damages to Alice for the destruction of her reputation and career. 6 months later, Alice returned to work at the Children's Hospital, where her colleagues welcomed her back with overwhelming support. Isaac and Lily resumed their normal lives, though they would need therapy to process the trauma of being separated from their mother. The Henderson family slowly began rebuilding, though the scars of Damon's betrayal would never fully heal. Trust, once broken so completely, could only be rebuilt one day at a time. But they were together and they were survivors. And sometimes that's enough. If you're just tuning in, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. And please show us some love with a like. And comment below to let us know where you're tuning in from.